It's time for Sweet Home CannaBama, a show that'll answer all your questions, provide accurate information, and dispel the myths of cannabis. And have your specific questions answered by emailing Jennifer@CannaBama.com or text or call 343-0106. And now, for all things cannabis in Alabama, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Jennifer Boozer, owner and founder of CannaBama in downtown Mobile. We're located at 558 St. Francis Street. Our phone number is 251-255-5155. Our website, where you can shop if you would like to, contact us, send us a message about the store, the products, or the show. That's CannaBama.com. And, of course, you can find us right here on Sweet Home CannaBama Facebook page, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. And so I want to get into real quick the only current events I want to talk about. Our next week is our 5th anniversary show, and we are going to have a really special show. I have like 8 people coming into studio and at least one calling in, and we're going to be giving away 5 prizes of $100 worth of product each prize. So it's $500 in celebration of our 5th anniversary. And so how do you win the prize? You win the prize by sharing this broadcast, this show right now tonight, or the replay all week. And then next week at the end of the show, we will be drawing names from those people that shared these broadcasts, and we'll have 5 winners. So, if you want to start sharing now, please go ahead. We want to make sure that that as many people as possible are going to be able to hear from our guest tonight and about this issue, because these are really, really important issues, not only to the consumer, but to the industry and to the country as a whole. So make sure you share that. And I want to go ahead and get into our first guest tonight. He's calling in. We're going to talk tonight again to Nicholas Patrick, who is the creator, director of the film Weed Wars. We talked with him last week about part 1, basically talked about what happened and how it happened. And tonight we're going to get into why it really happened. So I want to welcome Nicholas Patrick to the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, yes. Well, I got fired up even more because I was going back over the second movie, and I had been watching it in pieces, but I really sat down and watched it, and I was so excited to get to talk to you, because what happened in the first film was awful. That by itself, in and of itself, was awful. How your own state and your own, colleagues ended up turning on you and tearing down the businesses you guys had created over 5 years, and the legal struggle. And so when I got into this social equity topic, man, it's going to make a lot of people mad, I think. So I really appreciate you coming on, sharing this with us, sharing the film. And I really just want to ask you to sort of break down what part 2 is about. And
Sure.
Let's talk about that big, giant social equity elephant in the room.
Sure. So the part 1 obviously talked about what happened to the hemp industry. We discussed that last week. Part 2 talks about the cannabis licensing process and scheme that they created here in the state of Maryland for the adult use of cannabis, the quote unquote legalized recreational cannabis, when it's really not what it is. It's just kind of a smokescreen for the state to further enrich itself at the expense of small business owners and minority business owners and the cannabis industry and the cannabis community as a whole. So when they passed the law that we discussed last week that decimated the hemp industry, it was the same law that legalized adult use cannabis and created the infrastructure to be able to roll out an industry catered to adult use. And one of the provisions related to the bill that had everybody that wanted to play the game and get a cannabis license in the state of Maryland would have to submit to the administration proof that they were what you would call a social equity applicant. Now, this was the state's way of trying to address the historic disproportionate effects of cannabis criminalization against certain communities. But what never actually wound up happening was those people actually having a chance to play the game, because what they did was, and you see this a lot, especially in today's political climate, this political pandering and using certain hot button words like social equity and restorative justice to use as kind of a weapon to weaponize against the competitors to the cannabis monopoly. So you have a social equity criteria in Maryland that had absolutely nothing to do with anybody's history involving cannabis, meaning you would think that if you were trying to rectify the harms done by the war on drugs, that you would probably give people who were directly impacted by cannabis criminalization first chance at the license.
Right.
But instead what they did was they just said, if you lived in this zip code or this zip code or this zip code or this zip code, you can apply. Now, those zip codes that they determined were the social equity zip codes were literally the only factor that they used was whether or not there was 250 or more cannabis arrests over the last 10 years. Now, keep in mind,
wow,
in Maryland, cannabis has been decriminalized for the last 10 years. So there's not very many arrests. But needless to say, 250 arrests in a zip code without adjusting for population. And a lot of those zip codes happen to be some of the wealthiest zip codes in the state of Maryland. And so all you had to do was just say you lived in one of these zip codes over the last 10 years and you can apply for a license. Meanwhile, in the rural parts of the state where all the hemp farmers are and the actual agricultural community was, none of them were even allowed to apply. So, I mean, that in and of itself is just un-American, right?
Of course.
It's picking winners and losers and saying who can play and who can't.
Right.
Additionally, they limited the amount of licenses to 70 dispensary licenses and 50 grower licenses, which to me is like not anywhere near.
Oh, bro, if you knew Alabama's numbers, it would make you cry because y'all, that when I heard 70, I was like, wow, that must be nice. And I think Alabama geographically is probably a lot bigger than Maryland. I don't know about the population, but yeah, I mean, they are eking them out even less than that over here.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons why they say they're limiting the licenses is because they want to promote a healthy market for the license holders and to increase the value of the licenses.
Right.
That's market manipulation. This is America, and we don't limit the amount of barbershops because we're worried that this guy down the street here with his barbershop is not going to make enough money. We don't do that with Italian restaurants, and we have 8,000 licenses for alcohol in the state of Maryland, and you're talking about 70 for cannabis. So it makes no sense. The bill was written and influenced by the largest cannabis companies in the state and across the country, and our governor signed it, and our governor has $1.2 million of cannabis stock in a blind trust, and he sat on the board of one of the largest multi-state operators for cannabis in the country called Green Thumb Industries, based out of Chicago. He sat on their board of directors for 4 years and then stepped down to run for governor, got elected governor.
By cannabis money, right? He got elected with cannabis money.
Big cannabis, yeah, lots of cannabis money, huge cannabis donations. And then he proceeded to, 2 days before he signed the Cannabis Reform Act into law, he put that money into a blind trust. So it was just, there's so much corruption at the heart of this. And
it's almost like they're parading it because that stuff is pretty obvious. I mean, I saw the news clips. They're outing people, and still it's allowed to happen. I mean, that's insane to me. The number and the way there's a 2-minute clip in the movie. I think it's around minute 17 and 30 seconds. There's about 2 minutes where they list all of the different ways an individual or a corporation can donate to a campaign and how much, and how these people have used their family members, they use different business names, and they funnel all this money to one person. That you would never be able to give someone running for governor $150,000 as an individual. But if you did it with enough people at $6,000 at a time, from what I remember, then you can do that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just to the governor you're talking about, to the authors of the bill.
No, it was the Speaker of the House. In that portion, you listed all, and it was the highest offices in the state, the Attorney General.
We came up against them during this last legislative session, and it just seemed like they were stonewalling us. Like they wouldn't even, like the chair of the Finance Committee, which was the committee in the Senate that approved the language in this bill, wouldn't even take a meeting with us. Then we find out that back to back, at the end of one legislative session and the beginning of another, she got 2 back-to-back $5,000 donations from one company.
Right, right.
You know, and if you look at the timing of a lot of these donations, and we highlighted that in the film as well, 20% of those donations take place after campaigning is over and before legislative session
before
begins.
They go to make their votes. Yes. Okay. I want to stop you right there because we're going to have to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, I want to pick up there because, like I said, that 2-minute clip about who got donations and how they spread it out and do it legally. I mean, they might as well not have these laws against, big campaign donations because they're being bought just in small amounts at a time. But a ton of people involved. When we come back, we're going to talk some more with Nicholas Patrick about Weed Wars Part 2. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Nicholas Patrick tonight, the director of the movie Weed Wars Part 1 and 2. And we're talking about, we're getting into corrupt donation practices. Go to about minute 17 of the second part, and there's like 2 whole minutes. Everybody needs to see that. I don't care where you're from. This is happening. This is how things get done, and this is why I've wanted to talk to Mr. Patrick so badly. Nicholas, let me ask you this because we have a limited amount of time. Let's talk about the minority hemp businesses in Maryland that this law actually shut down in the name of social equity.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the most ironic, just ridiculous thing you've ever heard?
Right.
It's like, so you'll see in the film one of my friends, Derek Spruill, who was the owner of Cherry Blossom Hemp, he's an African American. He's a hard worker. He built a great company, and then he lost it. In the film, he says, "How do you put me out of business and call it social equity?"
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that, because that just was like, wow. We've had that happen in Alabama, but I want to hear about it. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think the important thing to understand is that if we were to, and you see it all the time in government, it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you fall on, politicians care very little about solving problems, because if they solve problems,
right,
then they have nothing to run on.
Right.
Yeah. They run on their promise to solve problems, but never with the intention to do so. Social equity is no different.
Right.
They understand that there are certain optics, right, to legalizing cannabis. Like, you did lock a whole lot of people up for this, and
right.
the state.
So it doesn't help them
at
all. It doesn't give them an advantage. And
right.
and from correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm hearing it from you and from the movie, this isn't about whether you're black or brown or any other non-Caucasian color. That's not what qualifies you. It's literally living in a zip code, right?
Yeah, and nor should it, though, right? Like, we
right, but still, this isn't even about that. In Alabama, we have a certain amount of ours going to minority farmers and licensees, and that's, I don't think it's not by zip code. It's whether or not they are a minority, and then whether or not they qualify.
Right, so even that is unconstitutional and un-American, right? We're not supposed to be doing things based on the color of people's skin. Now, at the end of the day, if you were somebody who was arrested for cannabis, then absolutely there needs to be some sort of reparation, some sort of restorative measures taken to those individuals that were actually impacted. But just because your skin is black doesn't mean that you had a run-in with the police over cannabis, and that shouldn't give you a leg up over somebody else. And just because you live in a zip code where maybe your neighbor got arrested for cannabis doesn't mean that you should have a leg up either.
Right.
The only way, so you asked what my reaction is. Here's what I know. I am somebody who truly is a true believer in social and economic equity. And the only way that you get to true social and economic equity is by removing the barriers to entry, loosening the regulations, and removing caps on licenses so that everybody has a fair shot to play. Right. You're not going to have everybody win, but everybody deserves an opportunity to fail.
Right.
And that's how we get to a truly equitable industry. The people with the strongest ties to cannabis culture, the people with the strongest ties to the plant, that understand the medicinal benefits of the plant, that care about it, the craft growers, the craft cannabis, the legacy operators, these are the people who will, if given the opportunity to, blow the MSOs out of the water just based on their understanding of cannabis culture.
Right. And the fact that MSOs and big corporations and even the big corporations that want in, they're not considering the end user. They're considering how can I maximize my profit line, and my profit margin, and how can I maximize my exposure to the customer. They don't care about the quality or the diversity of the products because cannabis is a very diverse plant and it has so many different uses, and they're not even including the requirement to have this type of education in these programs. They just want to take over everything, drive up the price, and we'll get crappy cannabis. But hey, we gave you cannabis.
And I think you would say just the same as I would that your customers that come into your store every day are people who probably don't want the Apple Store cannabis experience, right? Like when you go into a dispensary and there's an armed guard at the door and there's all these crazy restrictive regulations and that you have to show your ID and get logged into a system and they track every purchase that you make. People don't like that.
Right.
That's not cannabis freedom.
Right.
This is just more overregulation and just an attempt to control an industry and a market and to pick winners and losers, and the consumer, I think, suffers the most. And
absolutely.
So we'll never get to social and economic equity until we stop trying to control this plant. Oh, my goodness. It's so hard for me not to use profanity while I'm on the radio.
I appreciate your efforts. Well, listen, I do want to say, and maybe you agree with this. I think maybe you will, but I think this whole zip code thing is it's not even a well-planned farce. It's so bad. No, but the zip code thing, this is how it's probably going to go down. The people in those zip codes are the least likely to want to or have the economic ability to open these businesses. So these big corporations are going to come in and find a couple of suckers in each of these zip codes and say, hey, I want to use you as the majority owner. And then when we get the license, I'm going to give you a handful of money and you'll be a 1% owner or a 0.5% owner. Have a nice life. Get out of here. And
that's absolutely right.
And
Jennifer.
we're
That's
so
exactly
poor, especially now. I bet a lot of people would take it. They tried to do. I actually was approached by a company myself here in Alabama because I'm a long-term resident, and this company was foreign-led and didn't have anybody on there. And they told me majority owner and then 1%, and I could have a 40-hour-a-week job in their dispensary. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
But is that what is happening? Is that what you see happening?
That's precisely what's happening, and not to mention the outside of the ridiculous social equity criteria, they're also handing the licenses out through a lottery system.
Oh yeah, so you got to qualify, and then it's still a crapshoot.
It's still a lottery, yeah. That takes experience in the industry. It takes merit. It takes
It takes qualification and all that out of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need for any of that in a lottery system. And if you're one of those people like you were just talking about that are trying to tap on people's shoulders to front the license, how many times can they do that? Well, some of these companies have entered dozens of applications.
I was going to mention that too from the movie that they are stacking the deck.
Correct.
Ugh.
Correct. I mean, it's ripe for fraud. We always knew that it was going to be, and we're hoping that when we go to trial in February, that the courts overturn this and make them go back and rewrite this bill in a way that is consistent with American values of economic liberty.
Well, let me ask you this: have they gone and already given these licenses, or are they in the process of letting people apply?
They're in the process now of awarding conditional licenses. They did the first lottery drawing in March, and oddly and funny enough, 30 of the licenses that they gave out to bona fide social equity applicants have already been forfeited because the winners of those licenses were told they needed to show adequate capitalization within 6 months. So not only is the state telling you who can play, and then now they're telling you also how much money you have to invest in your business in order to meet their compliance costs. and it's out of control.
It is.
There's so much money that you have to spend to open a dispensary or to open a grow just in compliance costs because cannabis is so intentionally and unnecessarily over-regulated.
Right. What do you think is the solution to this before we have to say goodbye? What do you think the average American citizen who wants medical cannabis, who wants access to the hemp they already have, what do we need to do? What are we doing here?
We need to encourage our politicians to use the hemp industry as the model for national cannabis reform. The hemp industry has and has always, since 2018 and even before that, had a free and open market where everybody is able to play. We created a $28 billion nationwide industry on the backs of small business owners with 30% minority participation. Social equity is it will happen naturally and organically when the market is allowed to be open to everyone. So we need to encourage true cannabis freedom. Take the handcuffs off the plant. Stop treating it with less regulation than you treat handguns and alcohol. It's out of control. We regulate cannabis more than we regulate handguns and alcohol at the point of sale.
Yes,
so
and not everybody trying to get in and become a part of either side of the industry is coming into it to be a true leave or take over the world. Some of us want to just have a small business work in our community with our fellow citizens and have just like, not everybody has to be a Payless shoes. Sometimes you're mom and pop shoes and you sell in your community, and that's okay.
That's right, and that's how it should be. We should have the ability to have cottage industry. We have breweries and microbreweries.
That's right.
Right? And so we need to have the same thing for cannabis, and the industry needs to be open to the people who built it and sustained it, and the hemp industry has already set the model. All we have to do is copy and paste.
I believe that's true too, and hopefully they're not about to decimate it on the federal level and blow. No. We've got it half right, if everybody will just get on board. Nicholas, tell us where we can find Weed Wars before we have to go to break.
WeedWarsFilm.com, and you can go on YouTube, type in Weed Wars Maryland, and you'll see it pop up, parts 1 and 2, on the YouTube channel for the Maryland Healthy Alternatives Association. Thank you again, Jennifer.
Absolutely, and give us that website for the Maryland Association.
It's healthyalternativesmd.org.
All right. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for coming on the show again. Thank you for making this film, and we're going to continue to try to disseminate it to as many people as we can. We ask our listeners to do the same. If you haven't watched the movies, go watch the movies. This is happening, and the consumers have to care at some point. When we come back, we're going to pick up with Marty Shelper of the Alabama Cannabis Coalition. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we've been talking with Nicholas Patrick about Weed Wars Part 2 and the travesty that happened in Maryland, where we could be facing this on a national scale. Certainly, we're never without threat here in Alabama, and so we're going to continue talking tonight with our good friend Marty Shelper. Marty is the founder and president of the Alabama Cannabis Coalition, and one of the most vocal people in the whole state, always has been, always will be. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jennifer. I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, look, I wanted to get into this with you, too, because you are the reason that I even knew about this movie. And so I wanted to ask you, how did you come across the movie? And when you watched it, why was it so important for you to try to help him get this message out?
Well, I really believe in the 12 years that I've been advocating here in the state that one of the things that I have become the strongest with is networking with other people. Mm-hmm. And I'm on plenty of social media platforms, and I'm on LinkedIn, which is a professional social media platform for people who are in business. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in the cannabis industry that are on LinkedIn. So, and I believe in freedom and liberty. I believe less regulation and control is actually good for markets. And when I met Nicholas Patrick on LinkedIn, and I saw in his bio, the main thing that it said was free market. And if I could continue on a little bit more about that, back in September of 2023, when I began to realize that this legislation was tanking. I mean, it was tanking.
Right.
I mean, we had licenses that were issued or whatever or awarded in, was it June or July of 2023? And then we found out they had to throw out, they had to throw out those licenses. They had to start again in August. Well, by September, I sent out a press release calling Governor Kay Ivey, requesting that she call a special session to get the Alabama legislators back to Montgomery to write free markets into this legislation, because I knew that was the only thing that was going to solve this quagmire. Because the reason that we have the quagmire is because people want to be involved in medical cannabis in the state of Alabama, but this legislation was set up to fail because of the regulation and the control.
Right.
And we did not get any response from any legislators. We did do a couple of TV interviews. We didn't hear anything from Governor Kay Ivey, and I would like to state to date that we still, the citizens of the state of Alabama, have not heard from Governor Kay Ivey.
Right.
And I mean, I'm trolling her on Twitter, and, I don't know if her intern, that handles her Twitter account is relaying those trolling tweets to her. But we need to hear from her. We need to hear from her and find out why this is not being handled. And I spoke with Mike Ball probably a week ago in Messenger on Facebook, and I was asking him about free markets, and his response to me was this: "We're not California." I said, "I know we're not California. We're Alabama.
Thank God.
We don't, exactly. We don't need to be California.
Right.
We don't need to
Why
be
can't
California.
Alabama just be great at something besides football?"
Exactly. So I believe that the Alabama Medical Cannabis Commission is the Alabama Medical Cannabis Cartel. And when I watched Weed Wars and I heard them talking about all of these states, not just the state of Alabama, it's happening in Maryland, it's happened in other states. We have other states that have passed this regulation and control model. They have created legal cannabis cartels.
I agree.
Where they pick who's allowed to participate. And I even spoke with John McMillan, who is the executive director of the AMCC, and I was trying to discuss free markets with him. He did not want to talk to me about free markets. And I pulled a Connie Chung on him, and I said, "Hey, this is just between you and me. What is your personal opinion about free markets?" And he said to me, "We're a regulation and control commission." He would not even discuss free markets with me.
No other possibility.
I've had multiple journalists that I've talked to about this that asked me, "Marty, explain to me what free markets are." So if anything, Weed Wars, Part 1, Part 2, if you do not know what free markets are, it's freedom and liberty to be able to. Nick gave a great response about the barbers. We don't limit how many barbershops are on a block.
And Coca-Cola is sold on every corner. That's the one I always say. And everybody's making money.
Right.
But I think you're right. I was just thinking when you were saying that, I was thinking the big holdup here is these lawsuits, but it's because of the limited licenses, and having a free market open up means wasn't there, like, in the initial application request part where you requested an application, there was 600 and something people that requested these applications, and yet a fraction of that actually applied. And then a fraction of that are getting a license. But they opened it up and made it reasonable as far as the fees go. And I know there's more than 5 companies that could pass background checks and residency requirements and all that stuff. So, but open it up if you want to do the whole background check as a requirement, whatever. But anybody who wants to can open a business means we're going to compete. That it breeds innovation and it drives the price down.
And exactly for the consumer.
Well, when I started in hemp almost 7 years ago, the products that I have now that I sell for I have one bottle of oil. It's enough for a whole family. I sell it for $180. 5 years ago, it would have been $600. Because, and I was only selling things, I was determined to keep it at 10 cents a milligram. The national average for a CBD product, not even something that would get you high, but a CBD product was 11 cents per milligram. And it was, and now it's less than a third of that. So it does, because we had a free market, like what Patrick said. Open it up and use the hemp program as a model, because we had a free market situation. And guess what? The price went, I mean, look, I was buying this new fabulous bud everybody loves. A year and a half ago, I was paying 6 times the amount that I had been paying for the high CBD flower. And this week, I cut my prices by $3 a gram, because it's back down to a normal range. And instead of keeping it high price, I can lower the price, make it more accessible, more affordable. That's what a free market does, right?
Exactly. And I am beyond insulted that every time that I try to express my thoughts and my opinions about free markets, that I'm treated like I don't understand how business works. I am a business owner, and I know what would happen, and I'm a massage therapist by trade. I know what would happen if the government limited massage therapists. Mm-hmm. There would be massage therapists out there that would actually love that, because that would increase the number of people that would have to come to their business if they limited the number of massage therapists.
And guess what? Nobody, I mean, most people can't afford massages regularly. The average person doesn't. And that the price would just go up and up and up because they can. Just like it costs so much now to get a plumber, and you got to wait a week because there's so few people available to do it.
It's called what the market will bear.
Right.
That's why gas stations that are along the interstate, the prices are going to be higher.
Yep.
Because people want to get off the interstate. They want to get gas. I'm not saying they don't care how much it is.
And alcohol and cigarettes are more expensive on the coast, because people are stuck down there in a beach town, and they don't have a choice. You know, and they have these massive taxes on those products because people don't have a choice.
And I don't want to say anything disparaging about the people that were awarded license. I know several of them.
Me too.
You know, I have held them in high regard. Some I don't hold in high regard because I found out some things about them most recently. But they don't realize, or maybe they do realize, they're applauding this limited, controlled, and regulated licensing program because they know that it's
That's right. They've tolerated being jerked around and slung around, and because they know the reward is still greater.
It's going to benefit them.
Yeah.
And we have 67 counties here.
And every one of them got rejected at least one round. So they all know that they're one round away or one decision away from losing it again. But they're still willing to go that route because they have the best chance right now today. And they know that with the limited number, it will be more money for them.
The reason that I'm so vocal about this is because this legislation passed. Senate Bill 46 passed in 2021. It's going we're 3 years plus. The citizens of the state of Alabama that are sick, suffering, and dying, that need access to legal medical cannabis, still are not being allowed because of our legislator. It's not the applicant. Mm-hmm. You know, people think, well, the Alabama always has won. Will Somerville, they're fighting for their, to be awarded a license, and I applaud them, and I believe that Judge Anderson is trying to apply justice. I think he's trying to render justice, and people want to blame somebody. It doesn't matter what it is. People want to have somebody to blame. The people to blame is Governor Kay Ivey and the Alabama legislature, and I cannot impress upon them enough to Google Governor Kay Ivey, call her, email her, send her a personal message, and let her know why this is important to you. Find out who your Alabama legislators are here in the state of Alabama. I'm not talking about your congressmen and your senators that are in Washington, D.C. I'm talking about your local legislators here in the state of Alabama. If squeaky wheel gets the grease, I always go back to everything that my mother said. She told me, if you're fighting for something,
you have to be loud.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease. and I'm running out of grease. I'm still squeaky, but I'm running out of grease. But you need to contact those legislators, and don't sit back and say, oh, it's never going to happen in Alabama. We didn't think that any legislation would pass, and it did.
Right.
Don't say we're never going to have recreational here in the state of Alabama.
Right, because just the year before you were saying we'd never have medical.
Right, exactly. You have to participate in the process, and in 2026, every one of those legislators that are in Montgomery right now, the Alabama House and the Alabama Senate, they're going to be up for re-election, and when you write to them, just let them know that in 2026.
Yeah, my vote will depend on how you handle these situations, which is how it should be. I guess they probably aren't, maybe not even threatened by that because so few of us actually vote, and I get that it's hard to keep good morale about voting in a state that gives you no voice, but we have to change their voices. If they won't give us a voice, then we have to change who their voice is. And the only way to do that is vote. And it's so maddening that people don't. I get it, though. We need voter initiatives. We don't have those numbers that we need when we go to say, this is the percentage of the state that is okay with this, And I think that's a travesty, and people get discouraged, but you still have to do it. Marty and I and the people that we know around us that are doing what we're doing, they can easily drown us out. All they got to do is block us, ignore us. We're one person. I'm one person over here. She's one person over there. Every other organization's in their place, and they can drown us out. It's the people of the state of Alabama. Everybody. If you're old enough to cast a vote, you ought to be writing letters and emailing just one time. I don't understand why nobody, because they'll get heated in your face about it. And they'll curse the governor, and they'll curse the program, and they're just horrible, but they won't get up and do anything about it.
Jennifer, it's human nature that people love to complain.
I know. When we come back, we'll have more with Marty Shelper from the Alabama Cannabis Coalition. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking tonight with Marty Shelper from the Alabama Cannabis Coalition. We spoke with Nicholas Patrick earlier, Marty, about Weed Wars. We're on part 2. And, we talked about the limited licensing in the last segment. I do want to touch on the hot button issue of social equity, because really I think why I don't know. Free market means anybody, everybody, and it levels the playing field.
That's correct, but I do want to touch back on one thing that we were talking about, and that's citizens writing to their legislators.
Okay.
People love to complain.
Oh, yeah.
And they may say, and you suggested just write them one time. You want to write to those legislators so when they see your email address, they're like, Jennifer Boozer has sent me another email.
Mm-hmm.
Email them every week. Call them. Leave them voicemail. They have to log every phone call and every email that comes in and what that phone call is about. So please, if there are citizens that are listening and they live in the state of Alabama, make sure that you are contacting the governor and you are contacting your Alabama House rep and you're contacting your state senator. And yes, free markets levels the playing field. There is no need for a faux, social equity program. If anybody that wants to participate, whether it's medical cannabis or whether it's adult use or recreational, however you want to label it, if free markets are written into that legislation, anybody can get involved, and if your business fails, that's
on you.
Failure.
And like any other business in this country, that's on you. Because it's easier to go open a liquor store and literally kill some of your clientele than it is to do something like this that's also medicine that people use, to enrich their lives and their quality of life and sometimes to live at all. Why is it so easy to get a liquor license and a nicotine license and, it's harder to get into this plant on the hemp or the legal cannabis side than probably anything. I can't think of anything that's harder to get into. And the punishment involved is so harsh. and it's so nonviolent, and it's amazing to me that we're doing this. Marty, what do you think that people in Alabama watching this film really, what do you think is the most important takeaway when it comes to this farce of social equity? Doesn't that remind you of what Barbara Drummond and Vivian Figures did with this vape bill last year, when they got up and said, 100,000 children are going to die in Alabama in 2 years if we don't pass this legislation, and this is for public safety for the children, and yet it was going to shut down thousands of businesses in the state where most of those people have children. What about those children? And what about the children who go to school with a vape they got from some gas station somewhere, and their parents aren't going to pay a fine or can't pay a fine, or they don't have a parent, and they end up in the juvenile system in middle school? And we're doing this under the banner of Save the Children, but we're actually hurting the children.
Yeah, any time they want to pass any kind of legislation, it's about saving the children. This is not about saving. This is not about saving.
But they're trying to say, let's do this in the name of social equity, and it actually closed down already functioning minority businesses all over the state. And forget those families. Forget those people that are minority or that even live in those zip codes. Everybody's dead. How does that social equity?
Well, it isn't, and I haven't had any equity in the 12 years that I have been advocating.
Right.
I have begged and just begged businesses, citizens, anybody to get involved and to help. We have lobby days, in Montgomery. Yep. We have to beg people, and maybe we get 30 people show up.
Right.
So if there's somebody out there that's thinking that, they should get a social equity license, they need to watch this film.
Right.
They need to learn and understand what free markets are. They
need smoke and mirrors.
They need to learn and understand what true freedom and liberty is. I personally believe that if you want to grow cannabis on your property, you shouldn't have to have a license. You should be able to take it to a farmer's market. And Mike Ball, if you're listening, I know the top of your head's probably going to blow off, but they should be able to take it to a farmer's market just as if they had grown peas, if they had grown corn,
right,
if they had grown okra, or they had grown tomatoes.
And they could sell it, or they could trade it for other vegetables and other foods, whatever they want to do with it.
Absolutely. But until the citizens, this is not just with cannabis. It's with anything that you believe in. Until the citizens stand up, until they make their voices heard, you are going to get what the people in Montgomery think that you deserve. In any way that they can put money in their pocket, that's what you're going to get.
Yep.
They want to benefit from this.
Yep. And corporate cannabis companies that want these limited licenses, and they use this smoke and mirrors of social equity and still cheat the system, they're spending so much money paying these politicians. The ones of us who want to do this the right way and want everyone to have the equal opportunity, that are here trying to also partake in this equal opportunity, they don't care about us any more than Walmart cares about you. Walmart doesn't care about you, but the lady who makes jams and jellies in your neighborhood with elderberry that you take during flu season does,
right,
and remembers that your kid has a jam allergy or whatever. Walmart doesn't care about you. Neither will these corporate cannabis companies, and they'll be the only choice. If that is allowed to happen nationwide, and there is just this stranglehold on the licenses, you will not be able to get what you can get right now. Even in a state like Alabama, where we don't have full access to whatever product we want, what we do have access to will be a dream compared to what you'll get in a legal cannabis dispensary that is under the umbrella of Pfizer or someone like that.
Oh, my God. Let's not even talk about descheduling. But I have said since rescheduling, I have said since September of 2023 that we have a quagmire here in the state of Alabama, and free markets would end the quagmire. And
I agree.
they and they probably wish that I would stop talking to citizens about it, because they want people like mushrooms. They want to keep them in the dark. They don't want them to know the truth.
Right.
They don't want them to understand what their freedom and liberty truly means. And until those people are either educated or stand up, and I don't know, I really am at the end of my rope on how to educate them. I mean, I try on social media.
We just got to keep plugging at it, I think, just like doing stuff like tonight. Marty, we're at the end of the show. I want to remind our listeners and our watchers that next week we're going to have our 5th anniversary show, and we'll be giving away 5 $100 product prizes. And the way to get that is to share this broadcast either live or during the week. We'll get a tally of who's done that, and we're going to draw for 5 different prizes for $100 worth of product, my personal product line, and some of my friends. And we've got some great prize packages available. Like Marty said, you've got to get involved. They've got to hear from us. 30 people at the State House is nothing. 300 people, that would get some notice. 3,000, they'd have to listen to us, you know. And if that's 3,000 emails, so be it. We couldn't get 10 public comments on the vape bill. You know, I know you worked so hard the whole session and got a bunch of signatures on. Comments on the cannabis legislation that they were trying to present, and the decrim bill. That's right. And so we need you to stand up. We need you to call somebody. We need you to share it. If you're in the industry at all or care about maybe possibly being in the industry, but if you are a consumer also, or if you're a small business person, if they can do this to us, they can do it to you, and they will do it to you. If they find a reason to do it, do not think you are safe. We're an easy target. You know, we're a big old red target. And because everybody is still clinging to stigma, but we've already proven that majority of people polled don't even think there's a stigma anymore, and that it's normal and it's okay. They're okay with it, and it should be available, medical and adult use. So open up these markets, open up the floodgates, let the people do what they're going to do. Americans are great at innovating and creating small businesses, and each being different from the other, and that's what I think fuels the American dream, is being able to take something that you're passionate about, that you love, and put everything you have into it, and let it be a way to connect with your community, help other people, and it's a meaningful life. So join us every Monday night here on FM Talk 106.5 at 7 p.m. Central, or the live feed on the Sweet Home CannaBama page. And wait, what? The giveaway, I just said the giveaway. Share this broadcast so you can get that giveaway. Tyler wants y'all to know. Join us next week for our 5th anniversary show. Thank you for being with us tonight, everybody. Good night.